Well, good afternoon, and let me start with some good news for all of you. That, as the newspapers declared yesterday or day before, India's population is going to stabilize by 2060 at 1.6 billion. So that's good news for us. At least we're going to stop somewhere. The bad news is that all the students who are in kindergarten right now will have already retired from the workforce by the time our population actually stabilizes. You may wonder, what's that got to do with this presentation? Plain and simple, we've been talking a lot about technology, we've been talking a lot about classrooms, and I'm talking about the individual, because eventually education is for the individual. And never before has there been an identity crisis as there is today about the individual, because earlier it was taken up by the masses and the mass movements, and now there's the danger of technology also taking over. But at the end of it, it is the individual. So let's quickly look at some of the aspects. If you were one of these bottles, and you are a human being, would you have an identity? Or do you feel pretty much lost because each one looks similar to the other? Is that how we want individuals to be? Is that how we want students to be? There's the identity crisis of the teacher. How can I trust your information when you're using such outdated technology? There's the crisis for the tech savvy. I hacked into the school computer and changed all my grades, and then the school hacked into my computer and deleted all my games. I hear and I forget. I see and I remember. I do and I understand. And most of the speakers today have said exactly that. It's interactiveness, its participation is mingling with each other and sharing your ideas, which makes you remember things more. But this was said by Confucius in 479 BC. So what's so great about the 21st century and us talking about using technology to do the same thing? Why do we all the time associate the future classroom with technology? Does the future mean technology? Is there nothing else left to look forward to in the future? Bloom's revised taxonomy, for those of you educationists, if you revise it, again the understanding, the remembering towards the bottom part, the larger chunk tells you the same thing. And so does the learning pyramid. It tells you very clearly that talking and just listening to people or reading is just 5 or 10% of the learning process, whereas the more you go onto the audiovisual demonstrations, practice, and teaching others, doing things for others, the retention power is going to be much greater. So yes, the future classrooms have to be interactive. Students have to learn to move out. The classrooms have to become porous, and technology is going to do that for us. That's the various sources of information, plethora of it. There's no end to it. Students like to remain connected, and that's how they connect. Readily available, and there's no shortage of it. Schools. And you've got a lot of the learning environments, from the school-based closed structures, as they're called, to the online learning, multimedia, mobile learning, informal learning, broadcast, television, radio, which all tends to move towards open, accessible classrooms and schools. So, this is how students can communicate in the modern world. My report is about how important it is to save paper, electricity, and other resources. I'll send it to you telepathically. That's technology for you, even better than what you have. You haven't seen anything yet. We are moving into Web 3.0. Students, a comment. People say situations where a lazy student turns into a self-motivated learner only happens in movies and dreams. If so, then I guess I'm living a dream. So that's the version of the students. They're going to do exactly what they want to do because that's their dream. That's the language of tomorrow. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, T, 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 P, / / whatever, W, W, W. So the alphabet is going to change. So what's the conflict? One, the traditional teacher and the 21st learner. Two, the traditional learner and the modern learner. The old learner tech phobia, sequential, formal, passive, new learner, tech savvy, multitasker, personal hands-on, and so on. We know these, we know the differences between the old-fashioned learning and the new forms of learning. So we are heading, and the network teacher is surrounded by all this, and a good teacher of tomorrow, the futuristic teacher, needs to be able to multitask like all the things around here. So that's your 21st century skill teacher. Computer savvy, creative, critical, constructive, connected, and communicative. And we got everything right. So we produced the 21st teacher. But the educational origami, just to give you a gist, is the students are born with the technology in their hands. We've acquired it. Some of you have said that. And so the students with 21st century skills require teachers with 21st century skills too, right? It's the teachers who have to catch up with the students, and then we will be playing the game right. But the challenge is a lot more complicated. It is not to be connected, but to be interconnected. Of all the virtues related to intellectual functioning, the most passive is the virtue of knowing the right answer, because then it requires no decisions, no risks, no extra demands, no challenges. You're already perfect, you're already right. And if everyone became a wonderful learner and knew everything, then we would all have an easier life. But we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. Our perception is based on our mind, not on what someone else has generated or projected or created for us. Howard Gardner made it very clear about 15, 20 years ago about the multiple intelligences and how many there were, and that human beings needed this to be activated, more than one, in order for life to become enjoyable. So, what would you consider this child? I leave it to you. That's your decision now. The child can be labeled. Most traditional instructors would throw the child out of the classroom for not paying attention. But no one has really tried to look at it from the child's point of view, where even perhaps the technology is not exciting enough. From the IB theory of knowledge, it throws a huge challenge at us, because learning and knowledge is about all these things. And the moment you have ethics, reason, language, perception, emotion, and you throw the knower in the middle of that, then there's a lot more happening than just information. All right, a lot more happening. The virtues involved in not knowing are the ones that really count in the long run. What you do about what you don't know is, in the final analysis, what determines what you will ultimately know. It's not a tongue twister. You just need to think about it, and you'll realize there's what we don't know that we need to consolidate and work on, rather than regurgitating information which we already know, because that's available now at the click of a mouse. There are 4 learning styles, in which there's the sensing at the top, there's the feeling, there's the intuition, and there's the thinking. Look at this picture now and ask yourself, what is applicable out of these 4? Sensing, feeling, intuition, and thinking to this girl here. What would be associated with this girl? Is she capable of sensing? Is there any intuition in eating that food? What is she doing out here? When I asked this question to a class of students, I was pretty surprised and horrified actually, that when I asked them to give a caption, more than half the class, the caption was, "Yummy, what wonderful food." Is it? I think what happened was, somewhere down the line, the education and the thought process had become very unilateral. It was only looking in a one-way process. No one went into the heart of the child. They only looked at it from the perception of what you see. When there's sensing and feeling and intuition and thinking, and then there's a crossfire between perception and judgment, learning is very complicated. And these are the aspects which have to be there in the futuristic classroom. We cannot just generate information and exposure. There has to be a perception about understanding it. Susan Miller, who is one of the astrologists on the web and whatever, she wrote a lot about this: psychic energy, dreams, thoughts. I'm only using the underlined words: creative, listening to your heart, sixth sense, perspective, listen to your hunches, your feelings. It all comes out of this concept of what makes a total learning experience. You can't do with one or the other. So does the ISB vision of learning tell you. We have the IQ and the EQ and the EI. You remember reading yesterday's Times of India, and there was this gentleman called Mr. Thapa who had a fight with his daughter, who came home at 10:30 in the night, and she tried to hit him with a stone or a brick because the father was very angry, and he in turn picked up a stone, hit her on the head, smashed her head, killed her, wrapped her up in a piece of cloth, and dumped her on the pavement. What is happening? If our education was so stable and we were making good, perfect people, where did we fall short? The IQ, EQ, EI, where are we going wrong? Are we addressing this aspect of emotional intelligence? What did this picture activate in your mind? Was your IQ taking over, or your EQ, or both? What made you react first? I don't think it was the IQ, it would have been the EQ. And yet, it's the capacity of motivating ourselves, understanding other people, and so on. I'm rushing through this purely because you can get these concepts from the web. It's easy. Use technology of the 21st century. It's all there. Even our smiles today. You mean your big smile is bottle of aggression? Mine is bottle of hostility. You smile, but there's a different feeling and emotion behind it. Is the education system addressing all this? No. We are talking about subjects, teaching, but we are not teaching how to handle frustration, anxiety, stress, failure, depression, burnout, inferiority complexes, ego problems. We are not teaching them how to manage emotions. We just expect them to pick it up somewhere. And then at the later stages in our lives, if they don't have it, we call them unsuccessful.
Time to round up.
If you look at the IQ versus EQ, researchers will tell you that IQ now contributes only 20% towards success rates in life, and 80% of it is the EQ. And that's the conflict, the head and the heart, which is overall developing the personality. I'll end here, though there are a couple of other things I could share with you, but I'll end at this point with the idea that everyone knows that technology is one of the key aspects of the 21st century classroom. But the point is that the classroom, A, cannot be dependent on technology alone and all the information. We need to make the students not knowledgeable, but knowledge-able. They need to be able to digest the information. They need to be able to understand it. They need to be able to relate to that. And if the statisticians are correct, and 80% of the growth of the child is going to be based on emotional quotient, then we will have to ask ourselves, are we going to let technology and the future classroom take over so much of our time and research work that we won't have time to do what we need to do first, which is my first slide: work with the individual. Thank you very much.